So hey guys, in this video we're going to be talking about how we can read data coming from our database. And the database of choice we'll be using here is going to be Firebase. So I have a route called post here that just holds a HTML element that says my post, which is this, my post. So we are going to be using Firebase now as our database system. So I'm just going to visit their website and check out their documentation to see how we can fetch data from that database. Now, I have already created a collection called posts, and this collection holds a variety of documents. Each of these documents have a content and a title. Each of them have a content and a title. So coming from all the way to Firebase now, let's go to their documentation, and this is how we navigate there. Under more, we click on docs. So then under build, we click on Firestore because Firestore is the database system for Firebase. So in here, we're trying to read data from our database. So I'm going to click on read data at this left panel. Now click on get data. After I read data, I'm going to click on get data. Okay. So here, before you begin, initialize Cloud Firestore, which I've already done. I've done all this. It's available in my lib folder, firebase.config.js. So it's all done. Okay. So to get started, we write some data, which I have already done. I have added data to my database here. So there's no need for me to add. So this time around, what I want to do is I want to fetch all the documents coming from my database. So I'll follow this subheading that says get multiple documents from a collection and get all. So this all would now point to everything in my database system, which is what I need. So I'll take a good look at this function. So the first thing I see is we imported collection get docs from Firebase Firestore. So I'm just going to copy that import statement and drop it at the top of my screen. So import collection, import get docs. Now these two are coming from Firebase Firestore. So observe that the docs that we're trying to get here is plural because here we're trying to get all the documents in a certain collection. Now they have a function here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function to handle this fetch. I will not just write it directly. So I'll call mine fetch post. It's going to be equal to an asynchronous function. Now I'm making it asynchronous because I know now that I'm going to be interacting with an online database. So asynchronous just like that. Okay. So in this function now, the first thing I see is they created a variable called query snapshot. And in this query snapshot, they're trying to await get docs from their collection. So I'm going to pick that line and drop it in my function here. But then there's some things that will change. Now this cities is pointing to the name of their database, or rather the name of the collection that they're trying to fetch from. And I'm trying to fetch mine from a collection called posts. So I'm going to replace cities now with the name of my own collection, posts. Now db, in Firebase config file, I exported our database. So I have to import it here now. I'm going to import my database system from the file it's coming from. And let's come back here. So every time we fetch from our database, since we know that we are going to get more than one document, multiple documents, it returns an array. So we have to iterate through the array and get each of the documents individually. So I'm just going to copy this last piece of code here. And under the create snapshot that we created, I'm going to drop it. So create snapshot dot for each. At this stage, we are trying to now map through this create snapshot because create snapshot is going to create an array. So we're trying to do it for each. That's to iterate through it. And we're calling each of the objects there doc. So that's it. After this now, the next thing that we have to do is we have to call this function of fetch post. Now, because I want this function to run once, I'm going to call it in a use effects. And in order for me to use a React hook, I must make this component run on my client. just like that. So in here now, I'm going to call my use effects as a function, and I'll just call fetch post, then give it an empty dependency array so that it runs on mount. Then let's see what happens on the console after we fetch. So I'm going to inspect my page and on my console. So I see everything here now. So let's look at what's happening. Every time we iterate through the array, we are calling each of the object doc, and these objects is each of these documents here. Now this ID you see that points to 0yd_pj is talking about the ID of each of these documents, and we can get that with doc.id. So that's why every time we did a doc.id here, we got our ID, which is this one here. Then we now did a doc.data. So doc.data is a function that returns the entire object, that gives us access to the contents as well as access to the title. So this title says functional components over classes. The next one says why is use effect running twice. The next one while in JavaScript on and on until the data in our database gets exhausted. So that's it. Now let's see how we can send this data from our console here to our document here. So at this stage, we are going to create an array, and we're going to manage state for that one. So in here, I'm going to create an array. Const of array bracket is going to be equal to a use state. By default, the value is going to be an empty array like this. And I'm going to call this my array posts. And then the setter variable set post. Okay. So the moment I do that now, what I want to do is every time I get access to the objects, that's this doc ID object, I'm going to push it onto post so that in my HTML here, I can just iterate through the array and display them individually. So what I'm going to do next is inside of my fetch post function, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another empty array. I just call this one post array and set it to be an empty array just like this, empty array. Then after I get access to create snapshot for each, in here what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an object inside here that would hold the value of my ID, because if you observe what we are doing now, we have ID separate from data. So what I want to do is I want to combine these two to a single object so that I have just one object. So this is what I'll do. Const of post object is going to be equal to an object just like that. Then I'm going to call the ID of this object as doc.id. Okay. Then I'm also going to spread through using a spread operator doc as well dot data as a function. So post object now is going to be an object that has both the ID and the data. So this object I just created is going to have three fields: this ID, content, and title for each of them. So what I'm going to do next is after doing this, I'm going to do a push operation now. So I'll do a post array dot push. And every time I push, I'm trying to add the post object. Just like that. So it then means that post array now has post object. So that after this, I can then use my set post to assign to the post array my post. So I'm now trying to add this post array to this empty array of post here. That's it. So that once I do that, I want to send post to the console. So this is coming from line 23. Let's see what happens. Okay, at this point it is returning an empty array. So we have to now ensure that our use effect runs every time our post changes. so that we get the array of objects. Okay, and there you have it. So if you check this array here that has 6 objects, it gives us access now to the entire thing coming from our database, and that's it. So what we're going to do next now is find a way to send it onto the HTML document. So what I'm going to do is, in here, I'm going to create a div element. Now this div element is just going to hold each of these our posts. So I'll just give it a class. Grid md and above grid calls of 2. I'm going to give it a gap as well of 3, and then I'm going to pad it also, padding of 5. Then inside this my div element, I'm going to then call my posts. That's the array. Then I'm going to do a dot map function on it. Post dot map in here. So every time I map, I'm going to call each of my post p, and then I'm going to access the index for it. So this is going to be a callback function that would return a single element, and I'm going to return another div element, just like that. So this div element is going to have a key that would point to the index, because every time we map through, what we return needs a unique identifier, and that's where index is coming. So this other div element now is going to hold a p element that would return the title of our post, which is going to be p dot title, and another p element that would hold the content of our post, which is going to be p dot content, just like that. So having done this now, let's check the HTML. Let's see. And my database, we called it content and we also called it title. So in here now we have access to the title and we also have access to the content, and each of them are being displayed just like this. So this is how we can read data from our database, picking everything we did from the documentation of Firestore.